We have to find the square root of negative I. Take solution. First, we know that I is equal to the square root of negative 1. Then, negative I will simply be equal to negative the square root of negative 1. Then, square root of negative I is simply the square root of negative the square root of negative 1. So this is what we are looking for. I is a complex number of which the real part is 0. Negative I too is a complex number of which the real part is 0. The square root of a complex number is a complex number. We are going to let the square root of negative I to be equal to a plus ib, for a and b belonging to the set of real numbers. The square root of negative I equal to a plus ib will simply imply that if we square both sides, the square root of negative I squared will be equal to a plus ib squared. Then the square root of negative I squared gives us negative I to be equal to a plus ib squared gives us a squared plus 2 times a times ib gives us 2iab plus ib squared. All this squared, which is the same as I squared times b squared, which is simply equal to I squared gives us negative 1. Negative 1 times b squared gives us negative b squared. Then negative I will be equal to a squared. We are going to group the real part and we keep the imaginary part. This will give us a squared minus b squared plus 2iab. Then the complex number negative I, we can express it as 0 minus I. The real part is 0 is equal to a squared minus b squared plus 2iab. The left hand side being equal to the right hand side, it simply means the real parts are equal and the imaginary parts are equal. Then this will give us a squared minus b squared to be equal to 0 and 2iab to be equal to negative I for the imaginary parts. Then a squared will be equal to, transferring negative b squared to the right hand side, it becomes positive b squared. Dividing both sides by I, this will give us 2ab to be equal to negative 1. Then a squared equal to b squared simply means a is equal to b. Two ab is equal to negative 1. We have to solve for a and b. Putting a equal to b into 2ab equal to -1. That means we have to replace a here with b. This will give us 2b times b is equal to -1. Then 2b squared is equal to -1. Next, we divide both sides by 2. This will give us b squared to be equal to -1/2. Then, if we take square roots on both sides, the square root of b squared will simply be equal to the square root of -1/2. Then, b will be equal to plus or minus the square root of -1/2. The square root of -1/2 is simply the same as the square root of -1 over the square root of 2. This will simply be equal to the square root of -1 gives us I over the square root of 2. Rationalizing the denominator, that is multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 2, this will give us root 2i over root 2 times root 2 gives us 2. So this will simply be equal to plus or minus the square root of 2i all over 2. Then b is equal to, take the positive result, root 2 over 2i, or b is equal to, take the negative result, negative root 2 over 2i. Now we have to find a. A is equal to b for b equal to root 2 on 2i. Then our a will be equal to root 2 over 2i. Next hyphen, for b equal to negative root 2 on 2i. Then our a will be equal to negative root 2 on 2i. Now we can write down the square root of -I. The square root of -I will simply be equal to, we are going to replace a and b with their respective values. This will give us root 2 over 2i plus the value of b, root 2 on 2i, times I. Remember, it is A plus IB. This will simply be equal to root 2 over 2 plus root 2 over 2. I times I gives us I squared. I squared is simply equal to -1. -1 times root 2 over 2 gives us negative root 2 over 2. There is I here. This will be equal to, we bring the real part first, negative root 2 over 2 plus root 2 over 2i. You can factor out the root 2 over 2. This will give us root 2 over 2 times -1 plus I. This is the first square root of -I. Let's write down the second square root. We have the root of negative I to be equal to, we are going to replace A and B. We have A to be negative root 2I plus IB. B is negative root 2 over 2I times I. This will simply be equal to negative root 2 over 2I plus negative root 2 over 2 times I times I gives us I squared. I squared is simply equal to negative 1. Negative 1 times negative root 2 over 2 gives us positive root 2 over 2. This will be equal to, we bring the real part first, root 2 over 2 minus root 2 over 2I. Next step, we are going to factor out negative root 2 over 2. This will give us negative root 2 over 2 times negative 1 plus I. The square root of negative I is equal to negative root 2 over 2 times negative 1 plus I. Let's write down the conclusion. Therefore, the square root of negative I is equal to plus or minus the square root of 2 over 2 times negative 1 plus I. Let's verify. Verification. If we take the positive square root, that means we take root 2 over 2 times negative 1 plus I. We square this. The result should be negative I. This will be equal to root 2 squared over 2 squared, which is 4, times negative 1 plus I, all this squared. This will simply be equal to root 2 squared gives us 2 on 4 times negative 1 plus I squared. Negative 1 squared gives us 1 plus 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 times I, negative 2I plus I squared. I squared gives us negative 1. This will simply be equal to 2 over 4 gives us a half times 1 minus 1 gives us 0 plus negative 2I, which is negative 2I. A half times negative 2I is simply equal to negative I. Simply means that root 2 over 2 times negative 1 plus I is a square root of negative I. Now let's take the negative square root, negative root 2 times negative 1 plus I. We have to square this. This will simply be equal to negative root 2 squared, negative root 2, all this squared over 2 squared, which is 4, times negative 1 plus I squared. This will simply be equal to negative root 2 squared gives us 2 on 4 times negative 1 squared gives us 1 plus 2 times negative 1 gives us negative 2 Negative 2 times I gives us negative 2I plus I squared gives us negative 1. This will be equal to 2 over 4 gives us a half times 1 minus 1 gives 0, 0 minus 2I, negative 2I. A half times negative 2I gives us negative I, which is true. Therefore, the square root of negative I is simply equal to plus or minus root 2 over 2 times negative 1 plus I. This is how we find the square root of a complex number. If in case you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions at the comment section. Please, if you like the video, share and subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much for watching.